getting cut from the team 3 times, losing $2.6 million in NFL contracts, and blowing out his knee. Johnny Quinn has gone from NFL failure to US Olympian. Johnny's "what's next" attitude led him to success he never imagined. Today, we're talking about embracing change, accepting risk, and pushing through barriers to live a life on purpose. Welcome to Healthy Harmony, where we help you clarify and discuss health tactics to harmonize your life. I'm your host and health coach, Jennifer Pickett, and today's guest is former NFL player and US Olympian Johnny Quinn. Johnny Quinn is a keynote speaker and leadership trainer for organizations of all sizes. He is a U.S. Olympian in the sport of bobsled and competed at the 2014 Winter Olympics in Russia. Johnny is also a former pro football player, spending time with the NFL's Buffalo Bills, Green Bay Packers, and yes, even the Canadian Football League. Johnny has been featured on various media outlets around the globe, such as ABC, BBC, CBS, CNN, ESPN, Fox, NBC, and magazine outlets like Time, USA Today, and yes, even the Wall Street Journal. When Johnny is not on the road speaking, you can find him running his insurance business, the Johnny Quinn Insurance Agency, and spending time with his wife, Amanda, and their sweet baby girl, Amelia. Johnny, thank you so much for being with me today. How are you?
Jennifer, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so let's get right into it. I'm not going to mess around here. I think when somebody looks as successful as you've clearly had a lot of success. Our tendency is to believe that, hey, you've always been successful. Maybe you've just been lucky. But I know that's not the case because I've heard your story. I want to know, what is your biggest failure?
Yeah, I think that is true in this day and age with the power of media and social media. You get everybody's highlight reels or you read the bio and everything kind of looks good. And you just kind of question, well, maybe success came easy for them. And when you drill down the nuts and bolts, the reality is anybody who's achieved success at any level knows that the truth is you've gone through failures and some of them can be big. And for me, when I got to the NFL, to be cut 3 times in 4 years, to blow out my knee, those were massive, massive failures at that time of life. And it made you feel like, that is my dream dead? Is life over? What's next? Things like that. So you start to question that when you have those big failures. And I think looking back now that I'm out of that season of life, here's what's so interesting, Jennifer. And I couldn't see it then when I was in the middle of my failure. But that these failures, if you allow them, they can actually springboard you to future success. And I've now seen that play out, and I'm reaping those rewards of learning from my failures to use that to springboard me to future success.
It's so interesting because I think so often we kind of operate in that sense of fear, after we have had such a big failure. And yours certainly was a huge failure. You were in the NFL getting cut from 3 different teams, blowing out your knee, and it could have just literally paralyzed you. And I think that's what happens with most of us is we get kind of frozen in fear. But you're saying it can literally be a springboard to catapult you into what's next. So how do you go from that state of failure and feeling like, man, I don't know where to go from here, and using it as a springboard? How do you get from point A to point B?
Well, there's a couple of phases I think you go through is, when you experience a failure in life, and we all do, and it's to realize that's okay. It means you took a risk. And you should You should actually pat yourself on the back for taking a risk. But there's a mourning time, right, where you're mourned from your failure. And I remember, just being devastated, and that's okay. There should be proper mourning from a failure. But here's what separates, Jennifer, the ultra performers in life, the men and women in business and sport who find a way to get the job done. Here's what I've found out is that we all have insecurities, right? We all have different fears. But what makes these ultra performers different, and it's just a switch in the mindset, here it is they don't let those distractions get in their way. Do they have them? Is fear there? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have insecurities for everybody, me included? Yes. But the difference is I'm not going to let that distract me or trip me up on my way to move forward. I'm going to learn from it. And see, Jennifer, that's a mindset deal right there, right?
It really is.
That has nothing to do with where you grew up, what your background is, how much money you have in your bank account, what you're driving. That has nothing to do with it. It's
all about the mindset, right? It's just all about, and I think too, realizing you said something that's pivotal is realizing we all have failures. I mean, in fact, if you have failed at something, then that just shows, hey, I took a risk. So I'm really glad that you pointed that out, because sometimes we let that failure just kind of just seep into us and really hold us back from a life of purpose, like you say. So let's talk about change. I mean, as you transitioned from, hey, clearly this football thing that is my first love is not going to really work out. How did you transition and how did you change? Because I know a lot of us, we don't like change.
Right.
We like to operate within our comfort zone. So how did you maneuver that?
Yeah. So, when I made the switch from football to bobsled, and let me tell you, and you know this, when you grow up in Texas, we don't have any snow here. Right.
Right.
And, so at first, when an opportunity came to start bobsledding for the United States of America, I was open to exploring something different. And I think that's huge where people miss that is, are you open to exploring unexpected opportunities even when they're right on your doorstep? Because see, Jennifer, I could have easily painted the picture or sold this story to myself that went something like this. Well, I live in Texas. We don't get really any snow. I don't have a winter sports background. This probably isn't for me. But instead, I said, you know what? This is different. This is new. I'm a learner and I can pick up the skill. And because I was available, see, it set in motion a new dream, a new goal, a new direction. And to fast forward, right, 4 years later, to become a United States Olympian.
Incredible.
And wear the red, white, and blue and represent our country on the world's greatest stage athletically. Jennifer, I was so glad that I was open and available to learning something new.
Man, I think that's what it's all about right there, is being willing to do something different and get out of that comfort zone. And, this is something, it just kind of makes me think of my kids. I've got 2 kids, they're both teenagers, and just trying to emphasize that you need to be willing to constantly be learning and growing. This is not just for when you're in school. This is for the rest of your life. Be willing to learn and grow and do something different. And I think that's what the change, just being willing to change is what it's all about. So tell me this, you've got a book and it's called Breaking Through Barriers. It's called Push, Breaking Through Barriers. And this is something that really has my attention, because I frequently talk to my coaching clients about identifying those barriers and those obstacles that they just keep running into on their health journey. So how do you kind of coach somebody on how to break through those barriers?
Yeah, so I think it's first, we've got to identify what barriers in your life are holding you back. And a lot of times they can be invisible. So for example, what an invisible barrier would be something like maybe it was something a parent said to you when you were growing up, or maybe it was a failed business venture that's still nagging you, or maybe something else went south that is just still kind of just, drawing at you. Those are the invisible barriers that we have to address. Let me give you one of mine. When I was writing this book, and I think this will parallel very well, that, when I started to write the book, I had to fight this barrier of, well, no one's going to want to read this. There's already so many books out in this category. Why me? Right? That's one barrier. Here's another one that I had to face, Jennifer. Well, yeah, I went to the Olympics. Yeah, I played in the NFL. That's great. But I didn't win a Super Bowl, or, I didn't win an Olympic medal. So
Yeah.
certainly only the people that write books are the people that go to the Super Bowls, win a Super Bowl, or win an Olympic medal. Do you see that? I was playing these stories in my brain,
Yes.
right?
So that negative
Yeah,
self-talk
yeah,
was something that you deal with too,
right.
which I'm so thankful you bring up because I think it's something that we are so used to talking to ourselves in a negative manner that we don't even recognize it anymore. It's just the usual for us. So let's kind of dig a little bit deeper into that topic.
Yeah,
How important is mindset and positive affirmations? Like how important is it what you say to yourself?
right. Huge, huge. Let me. So when I got cut from the NFL the first time, I was devastated. Right. Somebody said I wasn't good at football, and more importantly, they took my contract away, and I lost my job and my paycheck. Right. So that was
Oh,
that was
oh, yeah,
devastating.
and that's a big, big,
It's a
big paycheck too
big,
right
big
there.
paycheck. That's right. But and that's really when I started to pick up the habit of reading. And I think you'll see where I'm going with this. When I had to figure out, here's what I needed to know, Jennifer, just to know that everything was okay. Is Were there other men and women who went after a dream? It did not work out the first time. Did they survive? And I found that by reading about other people and what they've overcome, what they've accomplished. And here's what I realized as I kind of stepped back out of my life and kind of, took those emotional blinders off that I was wearing of my first devastation, is that this is actually kind of the path to success. This is actually the roadmap for people who want to do something with their life and have a purpose and a direction. Is You have to overcome these barriers, and
Very
so I
interesting.
took what was just devastating to me, and it almost kind of gave me a 180 in my attitude, where I kind of realized, wait a second, I'm actually on the right path. I took a risk. I didn't fail, or I did fail, but it didn't kill me. And so I'm
Yeah.
going to get back up and keep fighting. And so the importance of developing a mindset around that, I learned from picking up books and reading. So I've developed that habit since I got cut at 22 years old, and now I look back. I wish I would have started that earlier, but I'm
Yeah,
a constant reader because I've got to protect what I'm consuming in my mind. And I think that's where some people
very
miss that,
interesting.
right? You've got to protect that. So I've got to fill that with, books, blogs, podcasts, of healthy content.
Yes, yes, exactly. I'm sitting here grinning from ear to ear, and I can almost hear through the sound waves that our listeners are just kind of leaning in because it is so very, very important. And this is something that I talk about a lot in this whole wellness world and looking at this holistically, this whole body approach. Everything that we take in, everything that we consume is relevant. So it's not just the foods that we eat, it's everything we read, everything we watch, every conversation that we have. And all of that has an impact on not just our mental and emotional health, but our physical health and our spiritual health. So it's everything is relevant. And I heard that recently in a detox lecture that we have to really look at that. So I love hearing that you started that when you were 22. I can't imagine there's a lot of 22-year-old football players in the NFL who say, okay, things aren't going so good. I'm going to pick up a book and read. So I love that. I love that kind of grit of, okay, let's see what's next. So let's talk a little bit about getting back up. Do you have, 3 or 4 tips for just how to get back up once you have fallen?
Yeah, you've got to. One of the things I think that we did well early on when I was going through these massive failures is the people you surround yourself with. Who are you letting speak into your life, from family, friends, the church that maybe you're a member of, or a community that can pour into you. Having people that still that believe in you when you might not even believe in yourself.
Sure.
is a, the power of community, having somebody there to pick you up, was huge. And even now, as a business owner, the community that I'm in, of men and women who are building businesses the right way, um, I want to learn from them. I want to be influenced by them. I want them to pick me up when I fall, right? I want to learn from their mistakes. Maybe there's a pitfall that I can avoid. And so, Jennifer, what I love about this, how do you pick yourself back up, is it's not some um, it's not some out in the distance, so far off. I need some crazy resource to pick me up. No, it's actually right in front of you. What are you
Yes.
watching? What are you reading? Who are you letting speak into your life? Because that is what's going to pick you up when you fall down.
Most definitely. Most definitely. So, who would be one of the most influential people in your life?
Well, growing up, I came from a wonderful family. I got a great, head start in life, and I remember my mom would always tell me, "If you can believe it, you can achieve it." And here's what that did for me as a youth, student athlete growing up, is that it didn't matter if I came home on a Monday and said I wanted to be a professional athlete. On a Tuesday, I wanted to be a doctor. On Wednesday, I wanted to be a president. My parents wouldn't laugh off my creativity or the fluctuation in my dreams. What they do is they pour gasoline on it. They'd encourage it. They'd light it on fire and say, "Hey, what's next?" And so it gave me
I
this,
love it.
right? It gave me this fertile ground to dream big. And I really think that set in motion some awesome things. So, I just come from a wonderful family that really set the tone for me early on.
God, that is amazing. And just a very powerful reminder for me as a parent and for all of the parents that are listening to, instead of being like, well, are you sure about that? But to continue to fuel those dreams and to speak that positivity. And I think it's true of like helping our kids discover what are their strengths and their gifts and their talents and their abilities, and just keep putting fuel on that fire,
Exactly.
because you never ever know. So I love so much about this. And I really love how very real and vulnerable you are. So what would you say to that person who says, you know what, Johnny, that's great, but I don't have anybody really speaking that positivity into my life. Like it's just me, and I've had so much bad luck. Like, what would you say to that person?
Yeah. So one, I get that question a lot. Is, well, I don't have anybody in my network. I don't know anybody. Where do I go from here? Jennifer, here's the beauty about living in 2020 and the power of technology. What it does is it gets rid of the excuse of, well, I don't know anybody. See, you can search out podcasts like yours that are uplifting, that are engaging, that you can listen to and get poured into. Right? There are online communities that you can join that maybe people are battling the same, kind of difficulty that you're trying to overcome. And so, what I love about that is it just gets rid of that excuses. There are opportunities out there that can pour into you, but it is going to take some effort, and we've got to go find it. And so
Yes, yes.
if you're open to working for it, it's going to be there for you, but you got to go work for it.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's that getting rid of the excuses and being willing to work for it. And it seems like we're in a period of time now where work ethic has really kind of fallen to the wayside. Do you see that? What do you think about that statement? Are you finding people that are still willing to dig in their heels and put in the work?
That's a loaded question there, Jen.
It really is. I'm sorry.
So I think, if we dissect this into a couple parts here. Number one, we live in a time where there are so many options and opportunities. And so it's easy. It really is. It's easy where if it's not working out at, an employer, or it's not working out, doing following a health regimen, well, I'm just going to move on to the next one because there's so much opportunity out here. And I think what
Yeah.
happens here, what you're doing is when you do that, is it's similar to building your house on sand. See, when the storm comes, everything goes crashing down. And so, if we can, I guess, debunk the myth of, well, it's probably greener on the other side. It's not. What we need to do is plant your flag, make a decision that tomorrow's going to be different, and I'm going to follow through. See, there's nothing new about that. There's nothing sexy about that. That won't sell on book stands, but it's the
You're so
truth.
right.
But see, it's the absolute truth is that we've got to build on solid rock. And when you do that, you can withstand the storm.
Yes, most definitely, most definitely. So let's talk about, as we, in this world where everything is at our fingertips, the comparison game is strong. And I know that you talk about this a lot. So, how would you encourage somebody who is, they just keep comparing themselves to everybody else out there?
Right, right. Well, typically when that happens, my first suggestion is very practical. Get off social media because I can
Right?
imagine that's probably where it's coming from. So we're going to need to detox there, a little bit. But let me tell you how that played out in my life. When I was in the NFL, and I kept getting cut, right? I went straight to the comparison game. I would make comments, and here's the interesting thing, Jennifer. I would never say this out loud, but I would think it. And I
Okay.
would think something like this. Well, maybe if I was 6'4" instead of 5'11", I would have played longer. Or maybe if I went to a bigger university, I would have played longer. Or maybe if I had a different agent, say Tom Brady's agent or whoever, I would have played longer. See, I was wasting so many days to comparison. Or when I made the switch to Olympic sports, I was not perfect, but I started winning more of these healthy battles of what I like to call a healthy form of contentment, where
Oh, I love that.
regardless, Jennifer, of who's coming in, what athletes I'm going to have to compete against, I'm going to find a way to get the job done with the current resources available. And I became a United States Olympian.
It is. And I love that expression. I'm going to be using that again, by the
Yeah,
way, that healthy form of contentment to where you're not wasting time with the comparison game, but you are surrounding yourself with good, positive people and you're learning and you're growing.
that's right, Jennifer.
And I think that is
And if we can,
important for all of
if we
us.
can, I guess, let me bring some clarity to this healthy form of contentment, because sometimes in a business setting, contentment. Here's what it doesn't mean. Contentment is not laziness. Contentment is not complacency. A healthy form of contentment blocks out comparison, and it finds a way to get the job done with the current resources available. And here's the thing behind that line, that find a way to get the job done with the current resources available,
Hmm.
is it takes all the excuses off the table. Because I hear it all the time. Well, if we had that budget, maybe I could get the job done. Or, well, if we had that size of a team, maybe we could get the job done. Those are all comparison statements. Let's find a way to get the job done with what you have today. Because when you do that, you're focused on action, and
I love
action
it.
moves the needle.
Yes, yes. And I love what you said that contentment is not laziness or complacency. I think that's absolutely important. So it does make me think about a few things here. And I want to ask you about your faith. So clearly, you're a very motivated guy. You have accomplished a lot. I'm curious how your faith plays a role in all of this.
Yeah. So, I grew up in church. If you live in Texas, or any of your listeners live in Texas, especially in the Dallas Fort Worth area, there's a church on every street corner. And,
So true.
I was very young, 6, 7 years old, when I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And here's what's interesting is I had a lot of success in high school. I had a lot of success in college. And looking back now, I was drawn away with a lot of worldly success, and I essentially put football up as an idol. I found my identity in football, and so when that
Hmm.
got taken away, It was very similar to what Jesus says in Matthew 7 on the Sermon on the Mount about building your house on sand versus the rock. Right, I used that analogy, a few minutes ago, but it was so true.
Yeah.
I had, had I have played out my contracts in the NFL and got all that money up front, right, it would have been 2.6 million at 24 years old. Jennifer, I would not have blown it,
That's a
right? I've got
that's a big
a big
number, by the
number,
way. That's a
right? Big
really big
number.
number. Yeah.
And I've got a decent amount of common sense. I would not have blown it. I really don't think I would have. But here's what would have happened. I would have continued to praise that idol. I would have continued to pack that sand, that hill of sand of, look what I did, look what I accomplished, look at me. And in the end, it would have been deadly, right? It would have been just as
Yes.
deadly. And so look at what's so interesting is having football taken away. And so at 26, when that, it was taken away from me, man, I realized that my identity is in Christ and Christ alone. And so that guides me in business deals. It guides me in how I handle employees. It guides me on how I work with customers, that I am a steward, right? I don't own anything here on this earth. It's all God's, that He's given me,
Right. Right.
influence and resources to steward for Him and His kingdom. And so it helps me understand what my role is, and it's not about me anymore. See what I'm saying?
I love that. And just couldn't agree more. And I have found myself in a similar situation, just where you find your identity in something other than Christ. And you realize, man, this is sinking sand. And sometimes you don't even realize it in the middle of it. For me, it was after a few years, and just as I was praying and asking God to reveal some things to me, and that's what was revealed, is that I was finding my identity in a certain measure of success. And I think we quickly find it, man, that is so fleeting, like you said so well. It's just kind of building that house on sand. And it's so important for contentment, going back to that healthy contentment, that we find our identity in Jesus Christ. He's the one who created us. He's the one who gave us these different gifts. It does remind me of something that I emphasize not just to my clients, but also to my kids. We talk a lot about gifts and strengths and talents and abilities. And so we have to realize that God has given all of us this beautiful tapestry of gifts, strengths, talents, and abilities. And He wants us to use those, not so that we can say, hey, look at me, look at what I've accomplished, but so that we can bring glory to Him, so that we can just impact the world around us. So what I love about this conversation, Johnny, is that you are impacting the world around you. I mean, clearly you have had a great deal of success, but it's the heart that you've shown us. It's the realness, the vulnerability. So I just cannot thank you enough for joining us today on the Healthy Harmony podcast. I do want to make sure that our listeners know where to find you, know where to get your book. So please tell us that.
Absolutely. So first, Jennifer, thank you for having me on. And my website is johnnyquinnusa.com. I've got everything there. My book's on there. I've got some online courses coming out. One's called Communicate Clearly, How to Overcome the Fear of Public Speaking. I think that's a big area that a lot of people want to improve their public speaking, so we put a course out on that. And I've got another course coming out called Paid to Speak, How to Build and Sustain a Profitable Speaking Business. So for you crazy people out there just like me, and you, Jennifer, who just get excited about speaking in public,
Yes,
and
yes.
enjoy being on stage and sharing a message, we've got that course coming out. And then on social media, all my handles at Johnny Quinn USA, at Johnny Quinn USA. Would love to connect with you listeners.
That is fantastic. And they'll also get to see that sweet baby girl of yours. She is a doll. And it looks like, Johnny, it looks like she's got you wrapped around her little pinky finger. Like she looks like she's the boss.
She is the best. I joke with my wife, I need, she's actually 18 months old today. And I'm like, crazy. I need 7 more of them now. They are the best. Just wait till they get older. I'm like, hey, I can't get there right now. This season of life is so awesome. She's amazing.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Guys, also remember to subscribe to us on your favorite platform of choice. Like us on Facebook or Instagram at Inspire Healthy Harmony. Join in the discussion on our Facebook group, and you can always check us out at inspirehealthyharmony.com. So until next time, I hope you have a healthy and happy day. Bye, y'all.